This is the Dalai Lama. He's the spiritual leader for more than 7 million Tibetan Buddhists worldwide. He's also an activist, humanitarian, and Nobel Peace Prize winner. The Dalai Lama is also 90 years old, and he's having a difficult time planning for the next Dalai Lama. Since 1391, there have only been 14 Dalai Lamas. It's believed that when they die, they are reborn as their successor, a process called reincarnation. The 15th Dalai Lama should be no different, except he'll face a dilemma that no other Dalai Lama has before: a rival Dalai Lama. China has occupied Tibet for more than 7 decades. It oppresses Tibetan culture and erases nearly all the signs that Tibet was once independent, except for the most famous one. Now China sees the Dalai Lama's impending death as its best chance to finish the job.
What they see in the Dalai Lama institution, the reincarnation system, is actually a launch pad for power. They want their own puppet.
So how does China plan to install its own Dalai Lama? What does it mean for Tibet? And could it all backfire?
The reincarnation system is a really unique form of succession.
Tenzin Dorji is a researcher at the Tibetan Action Institute and a teacher at Columbia University.
Indians are the ones who developed the idea of rebirth, the idea that every person has this kind of soul that is reborn after you die. The Tibetans really took this idea and basically turned it into a practice.
Tibetan Buddhists believe that Dalai Lamas can control their own consciousness. In 1933, the 13th died and directed his into a new person. Then a group of senior lamas went looking for him. They found Lamo Thumdup in rural Tibet. He was only 2 years old, but passed the tests they gave him. They reported that he recognized the lead deputy and items that belonged to the recently passed Dalai Lama. In 1939, they recognized him as the 14th Dalai Lama. They whisked him to this monastery in Lhasa, drilled him in Buddhist philosophy, and prepared him to be the leader of Tibetan Buddhists. But that was just half the job. In 1950, the Dalai Lama assumed political leadership of Tibet, the country, a historically tricky job. Tibet is located at the center of Asia, between 3 huge powers who see it as a buffer state.
Buffer states don't last for very long because there are a power vacuum, and all these powers nearby in the neighboring region worry about somebody else taking over that buffer state.
In the 1700s, the Chinese Qing dynasty invaded Tibet. In the 1900s, the British Indian Empire invaded, then handed Tibet over to the Qing dynasty again. When the Dalai Lama took power, Tibet was enjoying a rare moment of independence. But a year after communists took over China, they took over Tibet. Initially, they let the Dalai Lama stay.
Communist China had promised to respect Tibet's religious institutions and its right to local self-rule.
But Tibetans grew fed up with China's brutal policies. In 1959, they revolted. China cracked down and threatened the Dalai Lama's life.
Against the communists' reign of terror, Tibetans took up arms. It was a cry for liberty.
In March 1959, the Dalai Lama fled Tibet, crossed the Himalayas, and entered India. There, he set up a Tibetan government in exile. He would never return to Tibet. China crushed the rebellion there, then began to remake the country.
It caused so much destruction to the language, religion, the monasteries, institutions. They want to achieve cultural and civilizational domination over Tibet by turning Tibetans into Chinese.
But while China tightened its grip on Tibet, the Dalai Lama built a movement to save it. He traveled the world on behalf of the Tibetan cause. Thousands came out to hear him speak.
He speaks of the recent misfortune of the Tibetan people, who are enduring great hardships.
He won the support of world leaders and even recruited celebrities to the cause.
One thing I learned, that is the compassion, a sense of caring. Your neighbor's interest is your interest.
Historically, there are tensions between the 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism, as well as non-Buddhist Tibetans, but the Dalai Lama united them under his leadership. He kept the Tibetan identity alive, and it infuriated China.
They have called him all sorts of names. He's a wolf in monk's clothing. The Dalai Lama is basically a separatist.
But the Dalai Lama is not a separatist. He actually advocates for Tibet to remain within China, just with some autonomy, a compromise he calls the middle way.
Self-rule, autonomy, I do not consider these are most important issue. Most important issue is preservation of Tibetan Buddhist culture.
Many Tibetans don't agree with that. But because it's coming from him, people are willing to accept the deal that he may be able to accomplish.
Above all else, the Dalai Lama opposes the use of violence, especially by Tibetans.
Through non-violence, through human understanding, although may take more time, that I consider genuine achievement.
He has tried to be so reasonable, but he hasn't really found the type of audience in the Chinese government.
While China rejects the middle way, it understands that this Dalai Lama is a uniquely powerful figure, so it's planning to make sure the next one isn't.
If they can control the Dalai Lama institution, they can use that to achieve the final phase of invasion through civilization and culture.
China already figured out exactly how to do it 30 years ago. When you give to a nonprofit, how do you measure success? You'll hear a lot about low overhead costs and efficient fundraising, but what about the actual impact it makes on people's lives? This week's sponsor is GiveWell, and it's an organization that focuses on that impact. GiveWell spends more than 70,000 hours a year on research, helping donors fund highly cost-effective programs that save or improve the most lives per dollar. GiveWell has also spent 18 years researching global health and development and directing funds only to the most high-impact programs. Over 150,000 donors have already trusted GiveWell to give more than $2.5 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that this funding could save more than 300,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. You can find all their research and findings on their website for free. And thanks to the donors who chose to sponsor their research, GiveWell doesn't take a cut from your tax-deductible donation to their recommended funds. To find out more or to make a donation this year, go to givewell.org. If you want to make a donation, go to YouTube and select Search Party so GiveWell knows that you heard of them from us. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more. Thanks again to the great work that they do and for supporting our work. Now I'll take you back to the episode. In 1989, the second highest ranking leader in Tibetan Buddhism died. His position is called the Panchen Lama, which is also believed to reincarnate. Senior lamas began looking for his successor, initially with China's blessing. In 1995, they identified a 5-year-old boy, but a few days later, he vanished.
The Chinese government basically abducted that boy, kidnapped his whole family, and disappeared him. Nobody knows where this family is. Nobody has seen them.
China presented a different boy, whose name it claimed was drawn out of a golden urn. It's a succession ritual that Tibetan Buddhists briefly used under the Qing dynasty, for example, to select the 11th Dalai Lama. China revived it and claimed that it made him the Panchen Lama. 30 years later, he reliably toes the Chinese Communist Party line. Recently, he vowed to make Tibetan Buddhism more Chinese in a meeting with China's leader, Xi Jinping. Most Tibetans don't recognize China's Panchen Lama, only the kidnapped one. Many outside of Tibet do it openly. Those inside Tibet do it privately. But with him, China proved that even an illegitimate Lama can help achieve its goal.
They were not able to build legitimacy of their own, but they were able to destroy Tibetan power, Tibetan leadership.
China plans to run the same playbook on the Dalai Lama's successor. It says his name must come from the golden urn, and that any candidate named by a foreign government is illegitimate, something the current Dalai Lama has spent years rejecting.
My next life, ultimately, I will decide. No one else.
But China's plan is an existential threat for the Dalai Lama's movement. And so he's considered changing his own succession plan, sometimes drastically. In 2011, the Dalai Lama wrote that he would reevaluate whether the institution of the Dalai Lama should continue. The prospect of no Dalai Lama caused shock among Tibetan Buddhists, and, interestingly, anger from the Chinese government.
The Chinese government went nuts, and they said, no, you must reincarnate. As long as the Dalai Lama institution is there, the Chinese government at least has something that they can see and identify and try to control.
In 2024, the Dalai Lama confirmed he would reincarnate as a new person and be identified and named by senior leaders. But he's also said that he may reincarnate as a boy or a girl, and one born in a free country. There are around 150,000 Tibetans living in 40 countries. Most are in India. But while these changes give more flexibility for naming a successor, they won't stop China from using the golden urn to name its own Dalai Lama. So most likely there will be two people claiming to be the 15th Dalai Lama. And while only this one will enjoy the recognition of most Tibetans, they'll face two unprecedented challenges. One, dealing with a Chinese-named Dalai Lama, and two, holding together a worldwide movement that has only ever known one uniquely talented leader.
We all pray and hope that the 15th Dalai Lama, he or she or they, would be very, very successful both at the national level and at the global level, but it will be very difficult to see this type of total, wholehearted devotion.
That's what China's hoping for. But could a weaker Dalai Lama backfire? Recently, China's domination of other regions makes most of the headlines. Its campaign to eliminate the Uyghur minority in Western China. Its undermining of autonomy in Hong Kong.
Media mogul Jimmy Lai is convicted in Hong Kong in a case that's become a symbol of Beijing's crackdown on dissent.
Its aggression in the South China Sea.
And Beijing has been issuing warnings to other ships and planes to stay away from these man-made islands.
And of course, its threats to invade Taiwan.
China is sticking to its ambitions to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027.
But it doesn't mean the dispute over Tibet is over. In 1987, protests spiraled into riots. And in 2008, Tibetans rioted and vandalized Chinese businesses. Both times, the Dalai Lama condemned the violence and helped end it.
If utilized the violent method, then I totally against. If a violent thing, then my option, I resign.
China may not like him, but this Dalai Lama controls the most radical elements of his movement. If the next one can't, there could be another uprising in Tibet with no one to help stop it.
The Dalai Lama has always been an earnest and genuine negotiator who wants to compromise, who's willing to compromise, right? And now the Chinese government is about to lose that person. And I think the Chinese government will come to appreciate that too late.
China thinks that hijacking the next Dalai Lama will put to rest Tibetans' fight for independence, but it may just reawaken it. Search Party covers the whole world, so the next time we're covering a story from Tibet or Thailand or Tampa, Florida, we want your help. Newpress.com is a new website that I'm building with fellow journalists that will put the community back at the heart of journalism. At New Press, you'll be able to follow stories I'm working on from the very beginning and participate in story callouts. I need your ideas and your perspectives to cover some of these places. So over at newpress.com, you can join the waitlist right now. We're getting started very soon, so join the waitlist at newpress.com and you'll hear from us very soon. That's our last video for the year. This year, we'll be back in January. I just want to thank everyone who was here, who subscribed, and who watched. I want to give a special thanks to my team as well. These videos are not just me. It's a whole team that comes together twice a month to put together these stories. They worked incredibly hard. Their names are here in the credits. So thanks to them for an amazing 2025. We'll be back in 2026 with a lot more videos. I'm excited for you to see them and enjoy the new year, and we'll see you then.